Hello everyone, Modern here, time for another High Guardian Spice video, where this time I'll focus straight off the writing, right? And then the big question, is it the worst anime ever? The worst anime ever? First of all, it's more like, it's not really an anime, it's a cartoon, right? But they wanted to call it anime, and that's why I'm here, right? You know, on this channel, I review anime, manga, and video games, right? And some, DC and Marvel comics, right? But not cartoons. But they wanted to call it anime, so here we are, right? And I have been critical of many animes this year, right? Not of course every anime, but some animes. And let me burn both sides bridges immediately by saying that this is not the worst anime this year. It's not even the worst anime this season, okay? So it's not that bad, I guess, comparably, right? But at the same time, it is definitely an absolute shit show. It's like a 0 out of 10 show. It's just that they have some other animes that have been worse, right? We have had, for example, Emma, for example. That was just absolutely ridiculous. I would say the worst anime this year, in my opinion, is Fena, the Fire Princess, which is just an insanely terrible anime. It starts out good though, I'll give you that, right? It has like a good episode 1 and 2 kind of, and then it immediately goes downhill, and basically, that's spoiling it too much, but everything that Fena sets up in the beginning is completely thrown away, right? So, it is easily the worst writing I've seen in years. It's like the worst writing I've seen in like 10 years. Like this is how bad it is, right? It's ridiculously bad. And, not to spoil, but I'll give you a fair warning. For example, Fena's going to be trained in one episode, so like in the beginning, right? You got trainer weapons, trainer tactics as well. It's never gonna be any point. He's never gonna fight an animal. So in one episode about her training, and it never happens, right? For example, terrible writing. And this is really nitpick here, right? Another anime that looks worse than is of course X-Orm. This is the ugliest shit ever in anime history, right? And so on. So I kind of would say High Guardian Spy is a worse anime than X-Orms though, in general speaking. But at least it looks better, right? Fena, the writing is way worse than High Guardian Spice. And I really mean it, right? Of course, it's a pattern that all of these 3 animes are made by the same company. This man, it is a pattern there. I wonder what that is. Like, and, before people say, oh, you just hate High Guardian Spice because it is trans, it is gay, casual. Like I said in the last video, this is before the last video, of course. I collect gender bender figures, right? I have my Luffy figure, of course, breaking One Piece. I collect Futenori figures. This is a very expensive Futenori bunny girls, alright. And, I have every manga volume of Ranma, right? Ranma is a transgender main character, so that I won't bore with the details of that. But, of course, this is not about that every character is gay or whatever. For example, one of the best anime this year, of course, amazing anime, truly. Kobayashi's Dragon Maid Season 2 from Kyoto Animation with obviously Toru and Kanna, so on. And one of the absolute amazing animes that I've seen in the years, truly, and the best opening easily this year. And that anime is about a gay dragon, right? That is trying to kind of stalk, I guess, in a way, on a woman, but trying to get some Yuri stuff happening. There's also a scene when she turns into a Futanari, gender bender, yeah. Kobayashi gets a PP in one episode or so on, so I mean, yeah, then we have Saikawa, it's like, no! So on, right? So, of course, it would be kind of silly, right? The whole ridiculous argument that anyone that dislikes High Guardian Spice is because they don't like the Vogue or SCVs or whatever. No, it's because it's terribly written, obviously. Because I can find you many animes this season, so on this year, right? With many good female characters or gay characters and so on. For example, Toru is obviously, maybe Toru is bi, I suppose, but whatever, Toru is gay, right? Or she's at least bi, right, in Dragon's Maid, and it's an amazing character, right? So it's all about that, right? And obviously, I used how can I say, right? This is a many good female characters. For example, one reason why I love Black Clover, both the manga and anime, is because it has so many good female characters. Right? Obviously, Melona is my ultimate waifu. If you ever followed my channel before, I love myself Melona. But like every female character is amazing in Black Clover. Noelle, Mimosa, so on, right? It's not about that. Okay, so that's like boring, stuff like that. Now, let's talk about why High Guardian Spy actually sucks then, right? So, I just established that, okay, we have a lot of great animes and games and so on, right? For example, one thing I think is kind of funny is that when they talked about High Guardian Spy, they were like, oh, look at this main character. she's like pink haired and her name is like Rose. I was like, oh, so you mean like Steven Universe's mom? She looks as the same name as his mother. Okay, yeah, I see. Yeah, very original. And then I think about something like Lightning, right, from FF13, where it's like a a badass woman, right, a badass chick, right, with pink hair, a big sword. I'm like, I think I've seen this before, right? So, I mean, nothing is really unique in this anime. And my last video was about how everything is so stereotypical, right, in High Garden Spice. Like the dwarf has to be a blacksmith, right? The elf has to be an archer, and so on. It's very, very non-progressive anime. But now, chit chat over, right? What is wrong with the writing then? Well, the writing is like non-existence. It doesn't really exist in this anime. That's the biggest issue of it. It's almost kind of hard to. I mean, there's so much wrong with it, but it generally isn't like it's almost hard to explain it because it's just the word I keep saying about talking to people about anime is just boring, right? It's just boring. Like, it's just nothing there, and that's the reason why I still think that Fena is a worse anime from a writer standpoint, massively, because Fena is written like absolute shit, right? Yeah, it's horrible writing. Illogical, it's plot holes everywhere, so on, right? That is utter trash. It's like minus 10 out of 10, right? But High Garden Spice doesn't actually do anything wrong with the writing, but it doesn't do anything good either. It's just like, it just exists. It's just like, here's characters. You're like, okay, what's the backstory? No backstory. What's the motivation? No motivation. That's kind of High Garden Spice. Like, nothing is there, right? So, why, for example, I think that Rosemary is super pointless character. I do like her more than super screaming surprise Pikachu face every episode. That character is worse, crying every episode. That's worse. That's a more dislikable character. I actually do like Rosemary as a main character more than Takemichi, for example, right? So again, not the worst anime this season, right, or this year or whatever, but arguably it still is, honestly though. And I really mean that because it's just such a pathetic anime, High Garden Spice, because they don't do anything right. Which I think is kind of funny. And not to try to not go political here, but it actually to me screams political left wokey stuff, to be honest, because they love to say that we're progressive and we're doing this and so on. As in my other video, I was like, they're not progressive whatsoever because every character is very stereotypical, right? But they really are very, very, like, honestly, I feel pathetic when it comes to how they write it, because they're not writing anything. They don't have any daring questions, right? There's no any interesting bad guys. There's like nothing there that is new, right? Everything is very, very cowardly written, that is incredibly cookie-cutter generic. There is nothing new in High Garden Spice whatsoever. The only thing that is new is that every character is gay, right, basically. But there's nothing actually new when it comes to the characters, right? Their powers, their abilities, whatever, right? That kind of shit, right? Their fighting stance, whatever. Nothing with that. Nothing with their motivation, their backgrounds, and so on, right? So it's incredibly, like, cowardly anime, and that really screams how, on the same time, you're not gonna find any plot holes, right? Because it basically is no plot, right? So how can you find any plot holes? You're not gonna have moments where you're like, why is this character so unrealistic, stupid, right? For example, I can watch an anime like 86 and be like, oh my god, this scene here doesn't make any sense. How could she just insult the commander, nothing happened? Like, it's stupid, like, it's illogical, what do you mean? But in High Garden Spice, I can't find any scene where I feel, there's some scenes that are stupid though, but mostly, every scene is just kind of pointless. That's the thing, yeah. So I would argue that it is the worst anime I've ever seen in my life, because it's the most cowardly, most pointless anime I've ever seen in my life, because they don't do anything with any scene, right? But anyway, let's get some details. It's just generally talking about, right? But honestly though, first of all, what is really High Garden Spice? What is a guardian? I don't know. So first of all, High Garden Spice is clearly trying to be something like My Hero Academia, right? Or something similar like that. You send a bunch of kids to a school and they are trained. The problem though, which is a massive problem, is that they literally never truly explain what is a guardian and what are the points of a guardian. I was just joking, but this is such a terrible written anime that the main character just wants to go to the school, right, to become a guardian because her mom's a guardian. Sure, but it's like, but why is anyone a guardian? What is the job of a guardian? These things never explained. While in Macadamia, it is immediately established that everyone has a quirk. There's a few characters, but most people have a quirk, right? And some of the people are bad guys, they're villains. And then they have to fight these villains. So you're training children to become heroes, right? It's a very clear understanding of why do I go to this school. Another anime is very similar to is Little Witch Academia, which is one of my favorite all-time animes. With Aku-chan, one of my best girls. I freaking love me some Aku, man. I even bought the game, even though the game is not a very good game. Shaver was not a very good game. But Aku is amazing, Rise of Trigger and so on. And it's very similar to Little Witch Academia in many aspects. Right? They're witches, they go into the school, they're basically all girls there, and they're training and with magic and so on. Right? So, if you have seen Little Witch Academia, you can kind of, if you remove all the comedy from it, right, all the comedy, all the good shit and so on, then you kind of get Saikawa's Spice. I mean it, because Little Witch Academia is very, very funny. At least in my opinion, right? It's one of the funniest, a lot of this like body language, all this craziness that triggered us. Same thing, for example, BNA, and the animal girl will become a Tanuki, whatever. I won't spoil it, but Studio Trigger, they do really cool female main characters. And they're very much like, you know, all over the place, right? This like this shit all the time, yeah. And it's very fun, it's very genki, it's very energetic. Like, High Garden Spice, it's like so boring. It's not only is it boring in the writing standpoint, but also the animation standpoint. Where, for example, they're kind of trying to do a little Aku feel with Rosemary, but instead of being, you know, expressionful, great animation, a cool scene, right? It's like one scene where she throws her sword. She's like swinging the sword, right? To train, but instead of doing a proper sword training with actual animation or whatever, you know, movement, muscle flexion and so on, it's like, and then she drops the sword and it's like, this is an actual scene in High Garden Spice, because the sword flies, because the sword flies at that, and the characters are like, probably for a good like 10 seconds, and then they're like, broken. Like, it's so boring. So that's one thing immediately. Even talking about the writing itself, all this like attempt of slapstick comedy or whatever is completely missing, right? Because they can't deliver on the punchline, and they can't really deliver on animation. So it's both the absurd lack of animation is really ugly and boring, but also how is you know, the voice acting and everything. We comment to that, but it's just terrible. Okay, it's insanely terrible. Also, another thing for that matter though, is that of course Akko goes to school not to become a hero, right? But she is in, I guess, arguably love with, but she has a huge idealization of Chariot, right? Which she really, really admires. And she was so happy that Chariot could like show her magic as a kid, right? And give her happiness with her magic, how to say it, her magical kind of event, showing off her magical theater or whatever, yeah. And she goes to school because she wants to make people happy with magic, right? So this is just like backstory, and she has like a motivation why I go to school, right? And all of that kind of stuff is lacking in High Garden Spice. Like, I have no idea why Sage, which is the second main character, like, there's 4 girls, right? I have zero knowledge why Sage goes to school. They never explain what a garden actually is, so you kind of lack this general world building, right? But you also lack, like, why are they doing this stuff, right? So, for example, if you think of one of the most famous, popular animes ever, I was a big fan of, like, One Piece, right? Every character in One Piece, even the bad guys, but all the good guys, basically, right? They have a sad backstory, they have their mother got killed, the father got killed, you know, this person got killed. No one ever dies in One Piece, except in flashbacks where everyone dies. But anyway, so they all have this sad, you know, grueling backstory that's motivating why they want to be the best swordsman or the best navigator or build a ship or whatever, right? Or they want to fix the world and this thing and so on, right? And that is like a great motivation and backstory to motivate the person's behavior and so on, right? And you just straight up, right? Again, I'm just talking generally, not even in per character. This God, Spice is so bad that it just like there's not a single character that has a proper backstory. The only character that has a backstory is Snapdragon, which is kind of like the cross-dressing trans character. She, because he's a man that might want to be a woman, he's the only character to get like a slimmer of backstory, and it's like a 1-minute scene. And I don't even joke, he's the only character that has like a flashback, like literally, the only character that has a flashback, except the trans professor too. So, he's the only character that has a flashback. He's not part of the main 4 cast girl. I mean, he's a part of 4 girls, right? He's not part of that. He's like dating stage, kind of, right? He's like the boyfriend of one of them, or a little bit, right? So you're like, well, okay, so the supportive character gets a backstory in episode 11 of 12 episodes. So like the first 10 episodes, no character has like a backstory, and then finally the supportive character gets a backstory. It's like a minute long, and it kind of explains a little bit why he wants to maybe change gender, right? So it's just like, oh yeah, that's okay. But for that matter, I said in the last video, Snapdragon is my favorite character in High Garden Spice. He's the character that has, I think, the most sash. He tells Sage she's a moron and so on. So he, telling his girlfriend she sucks or whatever, right? Yeah, so that's a great scene. He has, again, he's the most written character. But it's kind of like being the best written character in High Garden Spice doesn't mean he's a good written character. It means he's the only character that has any kind of plot, right? Any kind of character development. No, he happens to want to change gender, and that's part of his character development. But honestly, though, he is the only character that goes through some kind of thing there. And I say he because he's like, maybe I want to be a woman, maybe I start to cross-dress, maybe I'm so he's kind of like, in some kind of maybe I shouldn't do, who knows. So she, it's hard to tell. The anime ends before he decides if he want to be a woman or not, right? So I don't know if I call him he or she or whatever, right? It's just like they. It is not sure because first Snapdragon is shown as a cross-dressing character, right? And he definitely is romantic interested in Sage, which is a woman. Of course, you can transition to be man to woman and be a lesbian, right? So you could be that. But in the end, his backstory, the only character with a backstory, I think is more presented as that he kind of wants to be more emotionally open because he's also angry at Sage not letting him, speak about his emotions, right? So it feels a little bit like he wants to be more the man. He should be more open about his emotion, right? And otherwise he might still be cisgender. I don't know. It's a little hard to tell with that character again because he's like the only character he has a storyline, right? But it ends just, I don't know. It doesn't continue, right? So another issue of the anime, like he or she's story kind of starts, but it doesn't, conclude. So I can just guess if he's gonna, because I doubt they're gonna get the next season, right? So we probably never know if he or she change gender or whatever. But I know the character then, there is no backstory, there is no motivation. I really have no idea why, not only why they want to be guardians, but I have no idea why Rosemary and Sage, the two main girls, why they're even not friends, okay? Because if there's one thing common in this episode, and I've seen every episode, I actually seen every episode, right? And it was hellishly boring. They fight all the time. And there is no backstory from being children, of course. There is no flashback, right, of them hanging out. There's no like build up of them meeting each other or whatever. Yeah, because the anime core again doesn't do any kind of character, storylines, right, except Snapdragon. So you have no idea why they even are friends because they only keep fighting. So the two main girls, and they basically hate each other in like half the episodes. They either have zero interaction, and it has to mean they're walking next to each other, but they don't even have any dialogue. Or they are fighting over something, right? And I have no idea why they're friends. They're very different. One is like a tomboy, fighting. The other is like a nerd, and they're very, very different. And the only thing I can guess is that I guess they're from the same little village, something. So there are only two girls on that age or whatever. But that issue then, and this is what I mean, it's a big issue, right? Is that Rosemary's mother is a guardian, whatever that is, because again, the anime never truly explains what a goddamn guardian is. Her mother is a guardian, I guess. It's never explained what the mother did, again, it really isn't. And she's like a nightmare of her mom dying or whatever. Not a flashback, though, it's a nightmare, right? Because her mom is missing, until we see this episode, but her mom is missing, right? The only case it is, yeah. And she wants to be a guardian. But there is never a single scene that explains why her best friend Sage wants to be a guardian, right? Because the Rosemary then, again, wants to be a guardian because her mom was a guardian. That's her only motivation. They never explain what she's gonna do as a guardian, or how it helps her become a guardian to like find her mom or something. So it's a very, very, again, very piss poor writing, right? It's incredibly piss poor writing. Basically, it's like, I mean, sure, I can accept that people are. My dad was a cop. I wanna be a cop. I can accept that. That's kind of like her motivation, right? It's a very weak motivation, clearly. But she has one objective motivation. But it's not explained really like what a guardian is, or her mom is missing, and like why does it help become a guardian to find her or whatever. Like why isn't she out, for example, exploring? trying to find her mom instead of just going to school to train, but they don't really train that well anyway. I don't know. So I must be like she never motivates why, because her goal is to find her mom, right? So how is going to school finding her mother? Of course, the argument is she gets stronger by going to school, but you could also argue she could get stronger by fighting dragons by herself, right? Or just trying to find her mom. And the anime never explores this issue. It never explores because it has no backstory. It has no goddamn backstories. So it never explains why she why she decided to go to school instead of trying to find mom more directly, right? Or like if she's trying to learn a specific ability from school. Oh, I want to learn this magic so I can find mom, right? Or I want to maybe, I think they lied about my mother. I mean, this teacher probably knew my mom. I think he is lying. I'm going to go to school and try to, investigate and try to, find my mom or whatever like that. Nothing of that ever happens in the anime. Or so she's like, why is she even there? I don't know. It's just like really stupid. She's just kind of at the school, right? Nothing, but she doesn't ever interact with anyone in a meaningful way, the main character, because she just kind of exists as a student, but she has like no drive, right? So compare something like, for example, let's say Naruto, okay, old school Naruto, right? Naruto is in school in the beginning of the anime, and he wants to, of course, become this strong ninja, to become Hokage, because everyone kind of hates him, right, with the QB and so on, and his bullets and so on, right? He wants to prove them wrong, right? So he has a goal, and he trains these abilities. He wants to be able to talk knives. He wants to be able to, yeah. Nothing of this exists in High Garden Spice, not even remotely, right? So it's like she goes to school, and that's it. There's nothing like she has no like specific goal at school. She doesn't want to talk to specific people to get information about mom, right? She doesn't want to learn any the specific abilities or whatever, right? So it's just, that's what I mean. It's taking that My Academia, and so on, right? It's the premise of let's put this magical children in a magical school, right? But because there's zero world building, we have no idea about the other countries or gods or whatever, right? We have no idea if this is monsters or so to fight. Truly, we don't do anime. It's such a bad written anime. And then of course we have the characters with no world building, just being in the school, and they don't have any like clear agenda, right? What they're doing at the school. So there's a massive lack of like, but why am I here for, right? Because I mean, okay, this is a medical school, right? So it's a little more college vibe to it if you're going from actual what you're learning. So what I mean with that is that because you're going to school, it's a little more in that sense that the grading system or whatever, right, is more in college vibes. So I mean with that, it's a thing that, let's say you go to college and you want to be an engineer, right? You have like 55 different tracks, right? Oh, I want to be a teacher in this thing, I want to be a nurse, I want to be a doctor, so right? It's a little more like that, right? When you go to like a medical school, even if you're 15, 20, whatever, because it's like, I want to be a medical knight, I want to be a wizard, I want to be a ninja, It's a little more like that, right? They go into school and they have this like stereotypical racial fantasy thing. Oh, I'm an elf, so I want to be a high elf archer, yeah. So they're training their like profession, right? So the diversity in classes are much bigger, right? That, for example, if you go to like a random school when you're 12, right? You know what I mean? Then you go to school, you learn math and so on, right? Here it's more like, well, I'm a high warrior paladin, so I want to learn to smite people. I want to be able to fight undead, or, something like that is kind of what you envision, right? That is, I mean, it's not really world building, but still, that's kind of how it is, right? And then they go there, and again, it comes back to the main character just being like, I'm just gonna go to school. It's like, yeah, but what are you doing at school? I'm just training at school, you know what I mean? So it doesn't make any sense, like how they actually are interacting with the world building they're inside of, right? Which is really a poor writing, once again. It's just non-existent writing, right? And of course, as I mentioned earlier, then it doesn't help that the anime never explains It never explains why Sage is there to begin with, or why they were friends. It never explains why the dwarf is there, really. It later explains that she basically doesn't want to be like a stay-at-home mom or something, but why is she at the Guardians? That's kind of mean that. Because you have this like dwarf girl, and her voice acting is just effing terrible. Every character is voiced act horribly, but the dwarf girl especially is just like, hey, I wanna be black. It's just so weird. I mean, it feels like the most unnatural speaking ever. She's so stiff. Her lines are like, it's kind of people reading on a script. Axe attack. I throw fireball. What's it say here? Fireball. That's the level of the goddamn dwarf. I mean it genuinely. Every character has horrible voice acting. I wouldn't even cover that in this video, right? But it's generally speaking, everyone is horrible, and the dwarf especially. It is the stiffest, shittiest dub shit I have heard in years. It is terrible. It's terrible. I will have to turn off the volume when I got to the dwarf character talking. Such a bad anime. But anyway, the dwarf girl, in a very similar manner, then she's just like, I wanna be not a stay-at-home mom, right? Okay, fine. That's like her only backstory or motivation. She just wanna be like her mom, a loser, stay-at-home mom. That's what of course, because the anime is vocal, right? And honestly, obviously, I thought about it in the last video, but yeah, that's a very vogue thing. Right? They have to hate, the stay-at-home mom, right? But anyway, so why did she go to a guardian school for? I genuinely have no idea. The anime doesn't motivate her. Why? If her only goal is to, I don't want to be, a stay-at-home mom, couldn't she just become like a blacksmith, right? And then work with the blacksmithing? Because these guardians, they're gonna fight stuff, right? Of course, the anime never really explains what they're gonna fight, or whatever, but they're gonna fight something? Dragons or something, you know what I mean? They're gonna fight something, right? And if I was the person that I just wanna be a stay-at-home mom, stay-at-home parent, right? Would my next step then be I have to be a warrior on the front line fighting dragons? No, I can just maybe work at a factory. You know what I mean? Like it's like a huge leap between I don't want to be a stay-at-home mom and I want to be a warrior fighting deadly enemies every day, right? Like it's like a huge leap between that. So, of course, the anime doesn't explain why she went massively, from her family life to become like a blacksmith warrior or something. It's just like. It's just happening because it's happening, right? The elf character likewise has the build-up of, well, my dad and mom are obsessed with the forest, and I'm an elf, so we have to live for the forest, and forest route. But at least she's there because she's like, her father was like, you have to leave the forest, I have to stay and die in the forest, but you and your mom can escape the forest, and then maybe save me. But again then, she's worried all the time that her father is gonna die from the forest, right? Or the rot in the forest. So at least she has some kind of agenda. One of the few characters an agenda. But she has no real storyline around it, right? It's not like there's no motivation of her actions though until that last episode, because like why is she at the school for though? Because back to this thing again, like, but why is the elf girl at the school if she thinks her father's gonna die? And even if she then, in the last episode, actually is trying to help her father, so, that's the only thing happening, basically, with her, after like 2 episodes, but it doesn't motivate, why was she there to begin with? How was it helping her? Like, why did she go there for? And is she like the only elf going there? Like, why aren't more elves going there? And all this stuff, right? So it's, again, really weak motivation, right? And then you compare it to something like Macadamia, as mentioned earlier, an issue, though, with this anime is not addressing, because it has no world building, is that in Macadamia, the people at the actual heroic academy, right, like Deku, of course, Bakugo, Sora, Todoroki, etc., right, they have very specific, powerful quirks. They have a test, right, to get into this high-level, academia, right? So they fight the robots, of course. Poor guys like Shinsho can't get in because he has mind powers or whatever, but they have a test to get in, right? And there's always some plot holes, like how did the invincible girl get in? How did she defeat robots? Why she couldn't see her? There is no plot holes, I suppose, but there is a setting, right? How to get into this very prestigious academia is hard. You have to fight and so on, right? This anime is still acting like this Guardian Academia thing is the best medical school they have in the country, right? They're acting like they're setting up it's basically the trope of we have the cliche top academia, right? But they never motivate that, right? Again, of course, they never explain that or even set that as a world building. They just act like that. So the anime has the setting where it's like, oh, she's the only dark elf wood girl in this school. She's like the best wood elf girl, something elf in this country, right? So she could be here, right? She's the elite elf girl kind of thing, right? That's kind of how they're presenting it, but they're never presenting that there exists any kind of measurement before you enter, right? Or any kind of, entrance exam or anything like that. Or that why can't the other elf girls be in school, whatever? So it's like a really weird thing too, where they just throw in the character in My Academia kind of thing, right? But they don't explain that. This is like the they have an exam or So the anime a lot feels like anime that you would kind of start watching My Academia at maybe episode 5 or something, right? That's kind of honestly how it is, because they immediately just start at the school. The girls just jump at a train and they travel to school. Obviously Harry Potter reference, right? Because they have zero creativity. So they just go on this train, they go to school, and then they are at school, right? And there's no entrance exam, there's no explanation of like the judging of how to get in there, and all this stuff, right? And then they just at the school. And it's just like, okay. And then they don't really do anything. They have no agenda, right? Like for example, again, the main character, as I mentioned, is trying to find her mom, right? But she's never actively actually tried to find her mom. You know what I mean? Like she's talking about, "Mommy, I want to find my mommy." On the same time, she never actually does anything whatsoever to find her mother, right? Like she doesn't talk to her. I do it earlier, but really though, that's one thing. The elf girl, exact same thing. She's like, "I want a daddy." And she never tries to actually find her daddy until the last episode. In her case, though, I will say in the last episode, like at least the last bit of it, she's doing something. On the second episode 11, where she's starting to do a little bit. But until that point, she's like the main character. They're both just like complaining about something and never trying to do anything about it, right? And of course, as I mentioned earlier, they're not doing anything actively, nor are they trying to learn at least something that can be useful when they do it. They just kind of generally at the place, right? And yet they kind of pretend like they are the elite girls, you know what I mean? Like I mentioned, My Academia, and they pretend these are the elite school of the elite schools, but they never build it up right. They never explain why these girls do they have higher mana, do they have higher stats, right? And all that kind of world building that these characters are possibly stronger than other characters or whatever is not really explained, and so on. But anyway, it's basically the first 8 episodes, nothing really happens. It's the most boring shit I've seen in my life, right? And I've seen, as I mentioned, I have seen other animes. For example, King's Game, which is a terrible anime to watch in my life. That anime is arguably better than High Garden Spice because it's so bad that it's funny, right? High Garden Spice is just really boring. It's like a 0 out of 10, just so boring. Both because nothing really happens whatsoever. There's no storyline the first 8 episodes at all. And then one bad girl appears. She's a bad girl. Comment it later, but she's just a boring start. Okay, completely. You can skip the first 8 episodes. You can miss a single thing. Okay, it's so incredibly pointless. And and then even after that, it's really bad written. Right? But anyway, you skip the first part. No motivation whatsoever. And you're sitting there wondering, oh my god, this is so boring. And it almost gets like King's Gate is a better anime because it's funnily bad, right? So. Arguably, to the main point again, the anime truly is, like, arguably is the worst anime ever because it's the most cowardly, pathetic written anime ever. It has no writing, right? It's there. But at the same time, it doesn't do anything meaning like really stupid, right? Because they're so cowardly for doing anything. They're also never writing like a really crazy backstory that doesn't make any sense, or there's no plot hole because there is no plot, right? So it's like a I can see the argument that it's the worst anime ever in a way because it's so incredibly boring. But anyway, so talk a little bit about just the last part of the anime, kind of like when it goes into when something actually happens. So what happens is in episode 8 or 9 and so on, they're actually introducing like a bad girl, a cat girl, and she's a bad girl, something happens, right? First of all, I have to say the animation actually gets a lot better. Not generally speaking, but just like they have actual 1 or 2 fight scenes, and they actually look better. But I mean, it still is like it's like the ugliest anime this year, right? After like Exxon, right? So, so it's like I mean, it looks better, but it's like from 1 out of 10 to 2 out of 10, right? So it's still incredibly boring and ugly. But it looks better at least. But the thing is that, of course, unfortunately, they can't write for shit, right? They really can't write. So when the bad girl appears, everything in this anime, it's so incredibly cliche. And of course, it's cartoon. It's not an anime, right? It's a cartoon thing. And one thing that I might do another video about, like I said earlier, but this anime is also a bad cartoon, right? This is not good. This is not worse. This is much worse than Steven Universe. Star for Evil, Wonder with John is a great show, yeah, so on. There's many cartoons that are great, even these like Vogue shows, Vogue, you know, those big Vogue SUV shows that are quite good actually, right? In a cartoon way. Like example, I like Steven Universe. I hated how it ended, but I liked the first season right there. It's a pretty good show, I think. It's the beginning. This show isn't, right? So I might do another video about that, just comparing it like comic book, right? But I don't know, here then, when the cat girl appears, it really kind of showcases you how it's just a bad cartoon as well, because she's so cartoonishly not evil, but actually good, right? You know what I mean? She's so cartoonishly good. The bad guy is some kind of weird smoke thing, like a smoke face, like, you have to kill them or I will kill you, you know? And she's like, oh, but maybe I can just capture them. No, kill them. But maybe if I just capture them, no, kill. You know, it's kind of like that kind of dialogue where, and I generally mean it, it's just such bad writing. Normally, right, when you present a new bad guy that is obviously gonna be redeemed and become a friend of the good guys, you at least try to break it in a bit. Like maybe they first do some bad stuff, and then eventually they redeem themselves. They have some guilt over it, right? The good guys are like, you used to be my friend, or Nakaman, you know, talk to Jutsu, and so on. And they try to, you know, make them swap side or whatever, right? But at least they are usually evil when they are first presented. And then you learn about their backstories, you learn about their character, and maybe the good guy knows them from some previous, you know, sad life, right? Or maybe I can see themselves in them, and they try to, you know, redeem them and so on, right? Looking at you, Naruto, definitely, but all the animes do it, right? So that's how it goes, right? This anime, immediately, and I mean immediately, this new evil, the first evil character, the first story that happens, the character immediately is written like, well, he told me to kill them, but I'm gonna use the sleep drug instead of this thing. I'm gonna petrify them instead. You see what I mean? So immediately, this bad girl, she's just like ridiculously fake bad girl, right? That she's straight away is like complaining to the lead, right? To her demon lord, can I maybe capture them? Kill them. But maybe if I capture them, you know, it's so silly, right? It's so silly. So you know immediately as the viewer that this is a cookie cutter, goddamn cliche anime where this girl is gonna swap sides, right? Immediately, yeah, because she's not even presented as trying to be bad guy, right? And she's just a boring character. She's a boring, lame character because she's just exactly what you expect, right? And then later on, in the last episode, spoilers here then obviously, another bad guy enters. He's a kind of comedically bad. He's like, I kill everyone! He's comedically bad guy. He's like an evil clown kind of guy, right? Death is the character more like it, right? And he's like, I'm gonna kill everyone! You know, he's that kind of character. And of course, when he managed to poison, or he managed to drug all the teachers in the school, but he tried to kill them, but then the cat girl exchanged the poison to do sleep drug instead, because reasons, even though it made it worse for her, and even if they fail, they're gonna kill her. She does it anyway, you know, because, yeah, like honestly, yeah, like it's never explained or again, of course, motivated why she isn't as evil or why she's, you know, trying to save them or whatever. But it's kind of like that immediately. You're like, oh god, and he's like, why are they giving me a sleep potion for? It's like, you know, we don't have to kill them. It's so in your face, right? It's so blatantly bad writing because like they have seen these other proper animes or even then of course cartoons, right? That the anime mostly is a cartoon, and they're trying to emulate that, but they just can't effing write. So they're like, well, we need to have one bad guy redeem herself. Okay, so let's have her be a good guy deep down, and let's have her always do good stuff immediately from the first episode she enters, right? So we know she's a redeemable bad guy. She basically isn't even a bad guy immediately because she's trying to save them, right? from the get-go, basically. This is sort of boring. And for that matter too, right? That this comedically man, of course, is evil. He's like, kill, right? That's how he speaks. And then he has the main character behind him with a knife kind of thing. And then he hears about like a teacher's name or something, and then he runs away for no reason. He could have killed her there and then left. So that kind of shitty plot holes does happen though. I mean, the anime barely has any plot, right? But when the plot actually starts, episode 9, 10, 11, or it's more like 8, 9, and 12, they kind of skip over 11, honestly. The plot, of course, is effing terrible. The little plot it has, because here's the bad guy, he won, clearly, and then yet he kind of like just didn't kill her. Even though he's like, kill, he literally is like, I wanna kill them all the time, and then he doesn't do it. Even when he can, right? Because of course he can't actually be he can't murder people in an anime, right? An anime, and this is what I mean. That's why it's a cartoon too, right? Because if it was an anime, he probably would just have all her and killed her, right? You know what I mean? Like in anime, they wouldn't shut up killing people. In cartoons, though, they rarely kill off characters. In animes, they could easily have a that scene there, right? But in a cartoon, they won't, right? So that's one thing too. But then also, and I really mean it, right? The anime has very few plot holes because it's again no plot. But when it starts having a plot, you see the plot hole. So then this assassin becomes their transgender teacher, right? This female to man. So it becomes him, right, to trick the girls. And he's in his like study or whatever, right? His workroom, whatever. And they're like, what? You know, he's trying to kill them, and the face kind of half-assed trying to do them, right? And then the actual teacher enters. And this is a massive plot hole too here. And this is why I hate this anime so much, because it's so badly written. So badly written. Everything's bad. When they're finally trying to write an actual plot, they're massively failing. It's like plot hole. It's a plot hole galore, right? Immediately when it starts. If they had the plot, it would probably be the worst anime ever, purely from Battle 2. But mostly there's no plot. But anyway, Habitat is that this transgender professor. He's like a magician, a wizard, right? You know, he's throwing fireball and yeah, he's like I'm a fireball guy, you know. We've seen he a little bit earlier. We've seen him fight earlier. He throws spell sword, like that. When he enters his study and sees another person, of course, pretending to be him, what does he do? He runs over and starts wrestling with him. Like, it doesn't make any effing sense. You're the wizard. I mean, he opens the room. He's the goddamn magician wizard professor, and he's like, imposter! I'm gonna brawl you down behind! You're like, why? This guy has like one strength point, 100 intelligence point, right? He's never before, of course, fought with physical. He's a magician guy, right? He's never done this stupid, of course. Yeah, so that scene is just incredibly terrible. Why is he doing that thing? He should just throw a fireball at him. Like he did the dragon episode before, right? It doesn't make any sense that he would fight anyone in melee when he's a long-range magic guy. It's really, really stupid. But of course, it's very cringe, badly written, because what happens is that, of course, we got the tumble, right? The two of them, right? The tumble. But then when they separate, of course, now the girls are like, who's the real one, you know? It's just a goddamn bad writing. It's like, you take one, again, an imposter, right? And you take the guy, the real person, and then, yeah, they have to have a fist-bumping fight, you know? They have to have this like, weird wrestling fight, so the girls can't know who's the real one, right? When one of them is a powerful, like, archmage, he doesn't have to go into melee. Why would he go into melee? And the other guy is an assassin that is like a fighter with knives. So why would you also go into melee against the assassin guy? It's like a rogue or something, like an assassin rogue guy, yeah. Why would you, you know? If you play any game ever, right? If you're at the far-range magician guy, you're gonna be like going to do one against, you know, like the assassin guy. It doesn't make any goddamn sense. It's so stupid. Especially, and then when they have the standoff, right? Who's the real one? Instead of just like, well, I'm the real one. Fireball! I have the fireball spell, right? He's like, well, I'm the real one. Instead of just, you know, throwing a fireball, because the assassin guy can't do that. He's an assassin rogue guy. He doesn't even have the fireball spell. Like, he doesn't have that. Because eventually he just throws a ball at him and he kicks him out of the window. So you can immediately be like, well, I'm the real one and I have the actual archmage skills, right? Because this is an anime, where you have different classes or something like that. The one guy is an assassin, right? Rogue assassin, and this guy's like an archmage, wizard, sorcerer guy right there. So he doesn't even have spells. Like, he's an agility-based character, you know what I mean? So it's just like, I can throw lightning ball, fireball, water, you know, and the other guy can't cope with that, because he can't cope with stuff. He only is an appearance magic change, right? He can't cope with the abilities. It doesn't make any sense to even ask the question. Just like, throw a fireball at him, yeah. And of course, it's just incredibly forced, right? And then later on, there's another plot hole immediately. So yeah, as soon as the episode actually starts having plot, it's the worst shit ever. Because later on then, when the assassin guy managed to drug everyone with the sleep potion, right? Because, you know, the other girl gave him the wrong potion on purpose, because he's the dumbest redeemed character ever. So he, again then, becomes the trans professor, the magician professor, right? And he enters some kind of, I don't know, a party that the other person has, which is very cringe. I won't talk about it here, but I mentioned in the last video that it's so cringe that every character is just like sex freak too. It's basically like the trans professor is having like intercourse with the main character, or let's say it's like the main character's aunts or something. Aunts, yeah. So she has a lesbian aunts, right? And there's a scene when the professor is like when he's like picking up those two to have like a three-way or something. I mean, honestly, yeah, like it's a scene where Sage then, her aunt is lesbian, right? And she's married to like an elf lady, she's a human, so there's whatever. And you know, yeah, and then later on they have this like scene with the professor, and he's like, "Oh, you know my aunt is?" And he's like, "Yeah, I know your aunt is." It's like a weird scene, and he's like, "Oh yeah, we go way deeper." It's like a weird scene where he's like, "Yeah," basically like, "Oh yeah, I smashed them hard." You're like, okay. I mean, I'm not bothered about it that much. I'm just saying that every adult in the anime is like a freaking, you know, thirsty, ecchi person, yeah, which is kind of cringe for it. Mostly it's a cartoon, right, not an anime. And then he managed to drug them, right, by of course giving them this sleepy potion, but he poisoned again, right? Because all the professors are like, woo, party, basically, yeah, they're like, yeah, let's F him, yeah, they're like, gangbang time. That's kind of how it is, right? You're like, oh my god. More, I mean, of course I'm a little hyperbolic, but it's kind of like that. They're having like a party, because, yeah, of course you can have immediately like, yeah, let's do it. It's kind of like that, right? But anyway, he drugs them, again, sleep potion, because of stupid bad written cat girl. So anyway, I mean, that makes sense though, because everyone is thirsty to, you know, smash, right? So they get drugged by him, I guess. It makes sense. However, though, the next scene, he tricks the other students into the basement with the teachers were having this like you know frisky party, and in the basement then the students find of course the teachers sleeping right at the table, like you know at the drinking table, and most of them like kind of covered table, right, so they were drinking on the table, and they also find the professor, the actual person, and that just makes no sense. So I mean, when the anime is trying to plot, it is goddamn terrible. So, to explain here, right? The assassin became Persian A, right? Yeah, became Persian A, trans character. He became trans character, right? Trans professor, yeah. So Persian T, okay. The assassin becomes T. He enters this like I don't know sex chamber that the other has, right? He drugs all of them, right? And, you know, drugs them all, right? Then he goes and gets the students and takes them to the sex dungeon, like literally. Takes them to the sex dungeon, right? And locks them inside the dungeon to then burn down the dungeon and that, right? But then, inside the dungeon is also the real Professor T. That just makes no sense, because he was pretending to be T. T wasn't there when he drugged them, because obviously he's entering dungeon, right? He's like, hey guys, party! You know, whoa, take my drugs! You know, yeah. He's like, whoa, you know, kind of that, right? And we see the devil teacher and, yeah, they're drinking, ooh, yeah, party, and they all, you know, get drugged, right? But of course, the real T wasn't there, right? T enters with, you know, the fake T enters, drugs them, right? The real T is never in the scene, because the real T being drugged by themselves makes no sense, right? Because the real T wouldn't be like, you kind of look like me, yeah, the real T wouldn't take, you know, the fake bait, right? Yet, the very next scene, when he brings back the students, the real T is sleeping on the table like, you know, he got dragged out, like the other. This is like the most obvious plot hole ever. You're like, what were they thinking here? He's like, takes that, enters the room, you know. It's just so stupid. It's just so stupid. Basically, it's nitpicking now, but I just think it's kind of funny that immediately when the anime is finally trying to have plot, because there really is no plot the first 8 episodes, right? And then finally, episode 8, 9, and basically kind of 12, 11 of Masho, around that point, yeah, so on. They're trying to have some kind of, finally, antagonist, right? They had no antagonists before, they finally some bad guys, kinda, and then immediately the plot was making, yeah, it's so many plot holes. But how would they drag that character? He was that character, he was like, he left the room, and then how did he get behind him? It was like, suddenly, that shit is happening immediately, right? But you're like, what? Did he teleport in there too? And how did he get right? How did he trick the guy he was pretending to be, right? Because he's not changing appearance either between these scenes, right? So he somehow he also tricked the real T by looking like him, and also made him tape it. This is obviously a huge, obviously it's a plot hole, an oversight from the idiots that made the anime, right? That it's obviously a plot hole, but that shit's happening a lot. As I mentioned, for example, why doesn't he just kill them for, right? You know, because he's like kill, but it's like he doesn't kill them, right? And that's probably because it's a very cartoonish way, right? You can't just actually do it, and that's coming back to my last video where I mentioned that it's so non-progressive, right? Because the anime, it's so cowardly, right? They're not gonna have any character dying, right? They're not gonna have any sad backstories and so on. So they kind of come back to that too, right? The characters, the assassin's actions are really, really stupid because, of course, he can't actually just kill them because it's a cartoon. It's an anime. So he can't actually finish them off, right? Which, of course, makes it devalues the whole show, right? And they want to call it anime, but in anime, he probably would have freaking killed them, right? Some of them at least, or maybe one of them, right? If he had a chance. Because, you know, really anime usually is a little more brutal, right, than cartoons. So that's a very clear thing too. They clearly are very Western, you know, American cartoons. And for that matter too, it's a little bit other video, but I, of course, I'm a huge fan of like Belgian comics, like French comics, so on, even some Swedish comics, stuff like that. And Japan definitely is more brutal, but Europe, Belgian comics, like my favorite Torgal, is very brutal. Okay, Torgal, that's like Berserk done by a European man. Like, Torgal, it has R scenes. The main character gets art. Spoiler, kind of like it guts, but by a woman, I suppose. But still, yeah. No, in Torgal, the main character gets like mind controlled by a woman. She removes his memory, and then implements memory in his brain that they are married. And then of course she force marries him. You know, this man, the main character, right, for a few years. Yeah. So in Torgal, that's a crazy comic. Okay. So in my opinion, generally speaking, right, Western stuff, and I mean Western as in American stuff, right? Yeah, American, USA is the least, you know, kind of brave storytelling, right? In that sense, right? Not, of course, everything, but when it comes to comics and anime in this kind of field, Japan, you know, is the most extreme, right? And Europe is a lot more, let's say, brutal, and they have R scenes, and well, you know how Europe is. You know, the French people, you know, Belgian French people, yeah, they kind of open with, you know, sex. Yeah, but honestly, it's a lot more like that. It's a lot more etchy stuff in French and Belgian. Of course, Belgian have the same language, French. You know, speak mostly French there. It's very similar culture. I'm not saying my family is Belgian, so I don't think you have to say it the same. I'm just saying that the Belgian comics and the French comics are kind of similar, right? And they also wouldn't. They don't really, you know, are afraid of doing like sex stuff and so on, right? Like you are in America. So I think that also screams how High Garden Spice is not an anime, right? It, of course, it's like a cartoon, because immediately when it's like Ari assassin guy enters, it's very, you know, it's very cartoonish, right? And it's so lame too, because of that reason. Because if you see in animes, you have really creepy characters, like look like Apollo in Dalmatia, whatever. It's very, you know, I'm gonna like take all the girls and all that shit, right? All these like really creepy characters you find in anime that you really feel like, oh, those guys are really creepy. Look like Speed Racer, holy shit, man. That anime has some really creepy guys, you know. And so, and that's right, yeah. That shit doesn't exist, right, in High Garden Spice, because it's a cartoon, right? It's not an anime. So they can't make the assassin Ori guy actually look intimidating. He looks like a cartoonish, you know. He looks like a character from, you know, a random Disney show, right? Like he can't be, no, he has to be like, So that also kind of devalues the anime when it actually is finally starting to have a plotline, right? Which goes back to it being so cowardly. But anyway, that's the review of the plotline, guys. It's like the most boring plot ever. Nothing happens for the first 8 episodes, and then as soon as they start having actual plotline, it's immediately shit, right? It's like, oh well, that strategy doesn't make any sense, and like, why is the cat girl, and the cat girl like, petrifies them for no reason instead of killing them, and it's so lame. Oh god, and they defeat her with some random crap. Not really. She wants to lose. Right? It's so bad. It's so boring immediately. And again, I think the biggest issue, as I mentioned, of course, is that no characters any motivation, right? They're so massively lack motivation. And also said, well, actually, the elf girl wants to save her dad. Well, yeah, sure. It's like a very binary motivation of, I want to save X person, right? But what's the plan to do that? Why? What's the backstory? What is happening? What's the strategy? What is she doing per day? What is she trying to do this tomorrow? It's like there's no path that she's trying to take, right, to reach her goal. There's nothing like, I want to be Pirate King, right? I want to be Hokage. And then you say I want to be Hokage, it's like, how do I become Hokage? Well, I have to do this. How do I become Pirate King? Well, I have to, defeat the Yonko. I have to go through these steps, right, to become Pirate King. This anime is like, I want to save my mom. Kinda. Like, she's missing something. but she actually isn't missing. But I want to say my mom. It's like, how are you gonna do it? Yeah, and I mean, the character could of course talk to people, try to, you know, learn stuff, try to understand her mom's secrets or whatever, right? But she just doesn't. Like, she doesn't even try to understand her mom's powers or why her mom left her or anything, right? And she never is trying to like explore the topic of what was my... For example, if my mother disappeared in her last quest, right, as a warrior in the, you know, fantasy world, my immediate idea would be like, okay, who is the quest giver, right? Yeah. My immediate idea would be like, who gave my mother the quest, right? Who was the person that created this quest? Killed this dragon. Who was that person, right? Let me talk to that guy, right? But my mom disappeared, right? My mom didn't die by the dragon. No. If my mom died by the dragon, I'll be like, okay, she died by the dragon, okay, you know. But if my mom went to fight this black dragon, right? And then the black dragon is dead, but my mom is missing, right? I'll be like, what happened with my mom? What with the black dragon, right? So I would go and talk to the quest giver. Oh, hello, princess. Why do you want to kill the black dragon? What happened to my mom, you know? And she'd be like, oh, the black dragon is terrorizing this village, but it's said to have a lot of different magic stuff, and it's said to be able to open maybe portals, right? Oh, maybe my mom is in another, you know, dimension or something, right? You know, I mean, then I can start having some clues. Oh, I see. Maybe mom killed the black dragon, but they threw her into like a time portal or something. Like, yeah, okay. And then I will go and talk to a guy that can do portal magic and that shit, right? But this anime is like, my mom is missing. What does the main character do? Effing nothing. She just goes to school and is like, I guess I'm gonna train or something, you know. It's just terrible, the anime. The character has zero emotions, zero story, and really, when I come back to the whole Vogue of, you know, pushing gay stuff, pushing trans stuff, whatever, it doesn't really do that because it just like doesn't have any storyline. So it's not that pushy either because it's just non-existing. It's just like, oh yeah, sure. So and that I have to say that, right. The characters to me aren't very Vogue in a sense, right? And I said, yeah, they aren't very Vogue. It isn't very pushy because the anime has so little storyline. The very little storyline they have doesn't really overly talk about, you know, trans character or whatever. It actually doesn't because, yeah, like there is no real storyline. So it's like, yeah, here's a trans guy. He wants to be woman, maybe. Yeah, okay, like, and then they don't really focus on that, right? So you're like, I guess, you know, nothing else happens, right? So it's not like they're focusing on it. And I mean, in order, so to speak, Vogue storytelling, they might, they might fail because they have one storyline and then they kind of, you know, shoehorn in the Vogue stuff, right? And that's kind of like ruining the storyline. So you might have a movie and then suddenly the like, actually, I'm a woman, you call me this thing, you know, yeah, and they kind of jump in and ruin the scene or whatever, right? I'm not saying it's bad, I'm just saying that happens sometimes, something that is done correctly, something not correctly, right? But because High Garden Spy has no real storyline for almost every episode, it's like nothing burger all the time. So even in this like trans Vogue scenes, they aren't actually that bad because like they're not like overwriting a dialogue. You know what I mean? It's not like it's like a good storyline, and then this character like, actually I'm a trans character. Or, no, that doesn't happen. It's like nothing is happening, and then she's like, oh, I used to be a woman. Yeah, I used to be a woman. Now I'm a man. Okay, you know, it's kind of like that. So it doesn't, like, it is not pushing it, or there's no actual like interacting with it because it's so little drama, right, in the anime. So yeah, it actually didn't bother me at all, the trans and gay stuff. I can of course say that basically every character is trans or gay. I mean, it's so ridiculous, but it doesn't really bother me that much because it wasn't really like a plot point, almost nothing, because there is no plot, right? Because there is no real plot, so like the only good plot is that that guy maybe wants to be a woman. There is no other plot otherwise. Like, this is so weird. But yeah, that's High Garden Spies. Long review. It's a terrible, terrible anime. I still hate Fena more though. Genuinely, you know, look at my Fena review. Because that anime, I guess it also had potential, but it's just like High Garden Spice is like, you know, aggressively mediocre, right? And mediocre as in aggressively bad, I guess. Aggressively boring, yeah, aggressively boring. But Fena is like aggressively stupid, which is like, oh, what about if every plot point didn't matter and every character? Oh, what about that even better? He's appearing in the PowerPoint presentation. So I don't think maybe I've seen Fena, but don't. It is absolute shit. But if you compare something like Promised Neverland with Emma, but also after Emma, where they had this like a PowerPoint presentation of the different storylines they skipped over, right? That is basically Fena as well. So the end of Fena, is exactly like A Promised Neverland, where they show a lot of like slides, like frames of here's the character we mentioned in episode 3, they never appeared. Here's this dragon never appeared. Yeah, like they're like showing like another 2-3 seasons in slides, right? In like the last minute. I'm not even joking. It's like same in Promised Neverland. Horribly both of them, right? So of course both those animes I would say is worse than High Garden Spice. High Garden Spice is just really boring. Those two are like actively like offensively bad, right? You're like holy shit. And doesn't test like 86 where Leona is like fighting the evil government in front of them, nothing happens to her, and it's like the pacing is the worst thing ever. I mean, it's like nothing happens for like 10 episodes. It's worse than High Garden Spice. Yeah, like nothing happens for until like the next season 2 or something. It's like one scene and the character development like nothing happened, and then she sweeps around at like 8 episodes. No, that shit is worse, man. That's like aggressively bad, right? And of course, like Michi is screaming every episode, like getting punched every episode, and never learning to dodge. I mean, at least Rosemary, I don't know. Rosemary's kind of OP. But that's the thing. Of course, the characters are very good too. Yeah, of course the girls are OP, right? They never do anything wrong, right? Of course they don't. This is the fight, right? But yeah, it's nothing about I can really say that are like, oh my god, this is the worst thing. But anyway, I might do another video straight for that when I talk about the actual episodes. I have written notes, but I actually did watch all episodes, right? Yeah, and I written notes like Mom had a face, episode 4 of course. I mean, there's a little bit of Mom having a nose ring because of course that's right. Oh yeah, like this is my favorite note here, probably. In episode 5, there's a girl that runs to cry in a room, right? She's like, oh, my friend is mean to me, right? She's running crying, she enters a classroom to cry, and then there's another girl already crying in that room, so they're like, oh, I'm sad! Yeah, opens the door, oh, it's like, oh, you're also crying! Like, it's so, oh god, it's written by the most lamest people ever. like a girl is, yeah, exactly, yeah. One of the girls is bullied. She's bullied. She has a bad friendship, right? Because the friendship that makes Sage so it wasn't making sense. She runs in, Sage is running into another room, and then another girl's already crying in there. It's such a lame scene. Holy shit, is it bad? Oh my god, is it bad? Oh my god, it's oh my god. That scene is so cringe, man. And also, the same episode, there's the people put a scene yesterday, but there's one episode where there's a new guy at the right. There's almost no male in the anime, but there's one episode about a guy, it's like some kind of hot Bishonen guy, right? And he has like the worst writing ever. He basically, I haven't thought about that, but he basically is like, I am the best, shut up woman, right? And she's like, well actually, we probably clicked the A, but no, I am the best, and he keeps failing all the time. And Rosemary keeps, watching him fail, and every time he fails, he's like, well, where I'm from, men do this thing, and he's written like, I don't know, he's written like no one ever tossed that, right, and it feels like the author has never met an actual man in their life, and I really mean that, because man, or woman for that matter, because no one talks that, no one enters a new school, it's like, I am the greatest, and like no one acts like that in reality, right? Or in the fantasy world. It doesn't make any sense. It's just a rigid storyline where this then obviously evil man just says like every, man spreading, and it does everything bad, I mean? It has all the target points. Shut up, lady, go back to the kitchen. And it basically it's like, he's a walking meme, right? Yeah, it's like, what is this shit? But they pretend that he's like the typical man, right? It's like, holy shit, it's bad. It is so bad. But there's so many nitpicks this anime. But anyway, see you guys and have a great day.